Working as an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people are going to be from your background are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's the stone wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle. Thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Thursday. It's February 27th, 2025. Grateful to have you along with us here today on rumble.com/amradpod. Guys, please smash the thumbs up. Follow the channel if you haven't already. If you want to subscribe, we really appreciate that. Definitely subscribe to the audio format of the show on iTunes, Spotify, and iHeart, all of those audio streaming platforms, because they're trying to get bigger there. That's where there's a lot of audience. We're hoping and aspiring to radicalize more Americans here on the American Radicals Podcast. It's going to be sort of an atypical podcast today. Just me in the seat. We have a bunch of media obligations. Garrett and I don't want to big time the audience too much, but when the Glenn Becks of the world say, okay, you got a few minutes, when we have the opportunity to try to radicalize that audience, we got to take that call. So I hope you all understand today, but we hopefully are going to make up for the lack of a normal length show, which should go about 30 minutes today, with the gravity of the discussion that I want to have. I want to have a candid conversation today. So I try to get my thoughts down on the side here, be looking off screen a little bit to make sure that I stay on task, because we really need to have an actual serious conversations about what the status of the FBI is. Because yesterday, for those who don't know, was the 29-month suspendiversary of one Garrett O'Boyle. Mine was last week. So 29 months ago, it was when at GOB Actual became indefinitely suspended, unpaid forever by the FBI. By the way, who's the president today? It's day 38 of the Donald Trump Part 2 presidency. So I'm pretty fired up. I know it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, but I really don't care. One of the commitments that Garrett and I made to each other when we decided to launch the American Radicals Podcast was that we were going to be fully honest. We were never going to say things that we didn't believe, which is probably why we have, between 4,000 and 5,000 followers instead of 400 and 500,000 followers. There's just a lot of people out there who will simp for cash and clicks. But that's not us. That's not what drives us. We are driven by the truth. Now, there's a caveat to that. You share the truth, but you don't necessarily share everything. You never say the things you don't believe, but you might not say everything that you essentially do. So I want to pull back the veil in light of this audience and your commitment to us over the last now 180 episodes we've been doing the show, over a year now. We've varied the time. You guys have stuck with us, and we really appreciate that. And I think it's really important for us to be as honest and transparent with you about the experience that we've had actually recently, because we owe that to you. Your commitment to us is something that we do not take for granted. Logging in to drop the episodes and seeing people waiting for us, or seeing people rated in by the Kyle Seraphin Show and sticking with us, and then having a concern for where our well-being, actually taking our opinions seriously and imbibing that information and having it influence you is something that is really a unique experience and one of the silver linings of this entire experience that we've had in whatever version of the multiverse that we are in right now. I have had people send me books. I've had people send me their resumes. I've had people send me their gripes. When I say people, I mean people inside the FBI or who have recently left, with the expectation that I have some sort of access, that I can just bring things to the director of the FBI, that I can bring things to the president of the United States of America. This is the multiverse that I live in right now. And I think one of the reasons, especially for insiders at the FBI who are bringing these concerns to me or bringing me their 12-point plan, is because they're still afraid. I mean, the way that whistleblower protection laws essentially work is you can write an email to the director of the FBI. He's one of the acceptable parties that you can bring a reasonable concern of waste, fraud, abuse, risk to the public safety, violation of rule, policy, law, procedure. You can go direct. He's the boss. That's supposed to be protected. And when I tell people that, they say, yeah, but if I do, I'm going to have the scarlet letter, just like you. And this is in the Kash Patel FBI. This is in the Donald Trump second administration, presently, today, day 38. Now, a little bit more details about what the experience has been even recently. I mean, we had the election in November. There's that transition period. Things are kind of in motion. I remember the day after Election Day going on my forever 12-mile run and coming home. Kids were ready for school and got a big hug from the wife. And we were really relieved. We thought that there was going to be some sort of movement in our situation. And I mean, there's a transition time. It's a couple of months. You're sort of sitting waiting, no phone calls. Seems like if there's a transition period, there would be movement if there actually was going to be an inclusion of the suspendables in any sort of transition, be it a restoration of our jobs or maybe just even a settlement or even some input about where we found concerns or where our resources and our moles are giving us information. I mean, we tried to push it along, but just didn't get a whole lot of movement there. And we also, in the friend household, had quite a bit of disappointments. You know, I kind of just came around to the conclusion of I'm unemployed, seemingly unemployable, but I do have an interesting set of skills like Liam Neeson in Taken. Maybe I'll just apply to the sheriff's office here. And it was funny how my sheriff, Mike Chitwood, Volusia County Sheriff, put something out on X a couple days ago in light of the federal workforce being tasked with writing an email with 5 bullet points about what they did last week. And Sheriff Chitwood said, you know, federal workers, you should probably include applied to the Volusia County Sheriff's Office because seriously, we are taking applicants right now. Well, Mike, I applied to the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. I actually did an interview with some of your HR people and told them that I had 14 years of law enforcement experience, 8.5 of which at the FBI, a year and a half of which working with your personnel. And I said I would start from zero, go to the academy. And they said, thanks, but no thanks. Turned me down. Earlier this week, I decided to actually just see what I could get. Because after all, I am unemployed and seemingly unemployable, right? This is the sacrifice you have to make. I put in for a overnight security job at a university. They wrote me back, actually. It's one of the few organizations that contacted me. And they said, with overtime, I could work overnight 12-hour shifts for $19 an hour. Take it or leave it. No negotiation. I also did a sit-down interview with some really nice people. People at a hospital. They have a security force, an armed security force that works really hand in glove with local law enforcement here in the area where I live. And they handle a lot of the Baker Acts. I mean, hundreds of emotionally disturbed people coming into the hospital every single day, people who have blood on their shirt and open wounds and are threatening others and themselves. And these guys have to step up and risk their safety for people in their community. And they're not even sworn law enforcement. And I sat down for a pretty extensive interview with people, and it was very refreshing because they had no idea who I was. They actually hadn't even really looked at my resume. I'm sure they're getting a lot of applications because, as much as we hear about all these open positions, I think it's kind of a canard. You go online and apply for jobs, and it just goes to a black hole in cyberspace. Who knows if the positions are actually even there? But I sat down with the chief and second in command, and we had probably an hour-long conversation. And they said, "Why are you applying for the job?" And as I'm sort of explaining who I am, they look down at my resume and say, "Well, do you have any experience in security, in law enforcement?" And I kind of give the 30,000-foot review of my background. And Chief looks at me and does the corporate eyebrow one up, like he's a fighter pilot, and says, I'm going to need an explanation, man, why you are sitting in front of me." So we had that conversation and kind of got into the little bit of the details. And it turned out that he actually had a similar story arc from where he came from. Was not original to my area either, had to kind of pack up his whole life. And while we're having this talk, he kept having these pregnant pauses where he would just tap his fingers for 10 seconds. That's hard. It's an awkward moment and then break. And actually, one time I thought we were done. I got ready to stand up, and he said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, hold on. I want to keep talking to you." And it became apparent the longer that we talked that he was having a hard time expressing what he wanted to say. And that was, "You have the job if you want it. And I'm going to insult you when I tell you what the job is, because that's really all I can offer you at this point. And I'd love to give you upward trajectory," which is essentially what he promised me. But essentially, the job offer was less money than I made as a police officer 15 years ago when I was in my 20s and had just gone to a police academy. It's pretty hard. I mean, where were you 15 years ago? I wasn't married. I didn't have little people that depended on me. I didn't have a wife who, parenthetically, right now, currently, as I'm talking to you, is in the other room working her ass off to support our family because she's our source of income at this point. Working at a job that I promised her 2.5 years ago that she was going to be able to stop doing by the end of 2022. Almost made it to the end of 2022. I got suspended in September. She was 2.5 months from being able to permanently retire and be a stay-at-home mom, volunteer at the kids' school, the life that we had always had aspired for her. And she's had to put that on pause for us. This is a sacrifice that had to be made. And this is just personal. I mean, I'm not talking about Garrett today. Garrett had to big time as well, and he's doing some other media things. But I think people who are members of this audience know the trials and tribulations of the Oboyo family. 29 months of unpaid, indefinite suspension from the FBI. I mean, I was told to resign so that I could take outside employment, and I'll get to that in a second. But Garrett's held the line. He's still technically an FBI employee. Hasn't earned any money other than the merch store, which everybody should definitely go to. I know Garrett's still making T-shirts. The-suspendables.com is where you can go. I'll throw up the little Chiron here, guys. And he's held the line. He's got 4 mouths to feed on top of he and his wife. And his wife does some work. She does some volunteer work too. And they are still waiting in limbo. And, I bring up Garrett because there was someone else that I reached out to. Someone who was with the FBI, worked a full career, retired, pension, and then felt compelled to come back to help out on the weaponization committee. And I'll bring this full circle even with the weaponization committee, because what I'm seeing now is a repeat of what Garrett and Marcus and George Hill and Kyle and me all experience with the weaponization committee. And this individual came back and worked with the weaponization, and their hands were really tied because Jim Jordan's a piece of crap who used me and all the other suspendables for electoral purposes, for personal empowerment, ambition, the aspiration to get your own committee, your own subcommittee, to get on to Fox News, and then no follow through. The last communication I had with Jim Jordan's office with the weaponization committee was the day that we testified in May of 2023. And big surprise, now that the Republicans have full control of the White House and both houses of Congress, no weaponization committee. So this individual worked for weaponization, tried to do the best they could, hands tied, because, like I said, Jim Jordan didn't really want anything out of that. And then they went to work for the DOJ. So I reached out and I said, are you still with DOJ? I'm worried about this weaponization task force that Attorney General Bondi has established. I think it would be great if all of us could get brought in and do a deposition and share the information that we have. We try to put out, maybe even on the podcasts and media, and write about it, speak about it whenever we can. But it might have eluded your attention. After all, there's a lot of content out there. I've no sorts of misconceptions that the American Radicals podcast is going to cross Pam Bondi's attention. And he said, no, I'm back with the Bureau. I was hired on Inauguration Day, January 20th. And I didn't respond because I actually have quite a bit of respect for this individual. But why wasn't Garrett O'Boyle hired back on Inauguration Day? Stay 38. He's still unpaid, indefinitely suspended, definitely not in a senior executive service role, making close to $200,000 working at the FBI. Seemed like if we could snap and hire one person, we could certainly snap and hire another. But that just hasn't happened. We're seeing the repeat of the weaponization committee that we saw a couple of years ago, when I, in good faith, brought information to Congress, and they took it, and then they watched me, they watched Garrett, they watched others, they watched our worlds absolutely collapse. They watched us lose everything. Actually, when I had a conversation with a senior executive in my office, and they said that I was under investigation, and basically the writing's on the wall, you're going to be eliminated. I called up Jordan's office, and they said, well, we're sorry to hear that. Thanks. Click. And then when my security clearance, which has been sort of the hang up for me professionally to get anything else, because I have a revoked security clearance, not just suspended, it's revoked. It was revoked the night before I publicly testified to the American people. Strategically, it was revoked and then leaked to the media to discredit me as a witness. And then when that came to the attention of one Jim Jordan, he was very, very supportive. And he said, Steve, you have 5 minutes to give opening remarks. I'm going to give you an extra 2. Thank you for your service. That's the compensation, I guess, that you get for blowing up your entire world. And let's talk about some other people. I mean, we are now a week into Kash Patel's directorship. I want to give him every benefit of the doubt. I mean, look, I'm a Kash fan. I'm wearing the Kash shirt today, guys. Big Kash fan. Everybody here knows that. Garrett and I have been huge, outspoken advocates for him and for him taking the helm. But I'm waiting for heads on pikes. I mean, it's been a week. Everybody in my chain of command, with the exception of one who retired, is still in the FBI. 2 of them have actually been promoted. Colt Markovsky, Sean Ryan, both working in Washington, D.C. One at Washington Field Office as the special agent in charge. One of them at Washington Field Office, special agent in charge. Another one is a unit chief of a counterintelligence unit, subsection, whatever you have in the bureaucracy of the headquarters building, where Director Patel works. He knows who they are. Why do they still have jobs today? We know that, what they did. I have it on recording. I've documented it in a book, the full transcript. True Blue, my journey from beat cop to suspended FBI whistleblower. Check out the link below, guys. Still for sale. Colt and Sean still have their jobs. We didn't hit the ground running. I mean, the Attorney General went out hard, particularly against states that were big on sanctuaries. Pam Bondi has said, hey, I'm suing your states. I'm suing your governors. I'm suing other officials. Department of Defense, major moves, scaling back, moving to cut, what was it we talked about, 8% of their budget. They're basically just pulling out of Europe, saying, hey, you're going to have to pony up, defend your own continent for once. No longer the American people going to finance the security for Europe. You guys take care of you. We're about America only right now. And that was immediate, day one type of stuff. We're supposed to get the Epstein list today. It's been a week. I don't know why it wasn't released a week ago. He has no expectation of privacy. There's no ongoing investigation. This guy's dead. Let's see the list. But we had to wait. We're getting trapped in the bureaucracy. Every moment that passes, that viper's nest, they continue to coil around you and pull you down and bog you. You have to go in and grip it and rip it. And we just haven't seen that. And I want to talk about something else too, because this isn't unique to the government. I mean, this is everything in Washington, D.C. This is the paradigm shift that has to happen, the mandate that was sent. You know, I am currently unemployed and seemingly unemployable. That wasn't always the case, which is why I'm in a better situation than Garrett O'Boyle. But I am now. And the reason for that is the same mentality that we're seeing in the FBI. It is throughout the federal apparatus, with that throughout the think tank space, which is where I worked for a while. You know, a think tank that told me that I wasn't allowed to criticize Jim Jordan, that piece of crap. Told me that I wasn't allowed to criticize a single Republican, even when they voted in favor of Section 702 FISA being renewed so that the FBI could spy on you without a warrant. Had to just keep that to myself. When I had writing assignments, I wasn't allowed to say things like, it's proper for the FBI to submit to congressional oversight. You can't say, I'm sorry, Congressman, I'm sorry, Senator, that's an ongoing investigation. I can't talk to you about that. It'll reveal sources and methods. I said that was wholly inappropriate and they should be fully transparent, which is something that Cash committed to. And I was told, no, Steve, you have to not say that because when we're in charge, we want that power. It's one big party and we ain't in it. And ultimately, the reason that I don't have that job anymore is because people who are getting hired by the current administration, like the director of OMB, and now the new regulations are, that's Russ Vought, Jeff Clark, big Trump devotees. They told me that I couldn't be friends with Kyle Seraphin anymore because Kyle Seraphin said something that was opposite of what Julie Kelly's position was. One big party, and I guess we ain't in it. And that's okay, because I think there is a misconception about where we fall on the American Radicals podcast, where the suspendables fall. It's not our fault if you confuse who we are or if you project onto us something that we are not. We have never been on your team. We're on Team Truth. Like I said in the very beginning of the episode, I will never say things I don't believe. If it's inconsistent for your preferred narrative, that's a you problem. If you perceive that I was a political actor who was going to mouth the talking points that you wanted me to say so that your guy could win an election, again, your fault, not mine. Now, we have had some movement. It hasn't been, I don't think, very productive. There was a recent reporting to me that there's initiatives in the FBI. And this is where I say that we're kind of missing the opportunity. There's no heads on pikes, no drastic reforms. I mean, integrated program management, which I talk about all the time, and I'm sorry, AMRADs, it's still here today. Field offices on the FBI are still hitting quotas. They're actually adding quotas. There's new quotas because now if the FBI does participate in an ICE raid to deport Tren de Aragua, which they're trying to get out of, they're telling people you can morally object to that. But if they do it, if they do go ahead and help out ICE, there's a quota. They're opening up terrorism cases for every single one so they can boost their terrorism numbers and get bonuses. There's a new quota that says that if the special agent in charge actually attends the raid and they hit a certain number of percentage of attendance, participation awards, again, a quota that ends in them getting a bonus. Now we have all, Kyle Seraphin, Garrett O'Boyle, Phil Kennedy, Marcus Allen, myself, we've all said that we loved our jobs. We basically did our jobs. They were our hobby. We all looked forward to going in on Monday. And maybe Kyle not so much because he's kind of an outdoor dog and he was sitting indoors a lot. But for the most part, we realized that we had a great job that we all loved to do. And unfortunately, I mean, even at this point, the offer being on the table, and it isn't for the foreseeable future, there is no offer on the table to go back to doing what we were doing. That's not something that we can even do anymore. I mean, I can't go back to investigating pedophiles. How am I going to testify in court when there are hundreds and thousands of examples of me publicly calling for the end of the FBI? Agent friend, I see that you called for the end of the FBI. Why did you arrest my client? Goes to credibility, right? And I don't think any of us want to go and move to Washington, D.C. That's horrible. I want to never leave Florida. I don't ever want to put pants on. I want to wear shorts every single day. But I think we all viewed it as the Isaiah 6:8 moment. And whom shall I send? Here I am, send me. It's a call to service. If you need me, I'm available for tasking. And I will make that sacrifice. But that offer hasn't been proffered out there, which, I mean, can only lead me to conclude, and that's completely within their purview, that they don't want our input. And that's fine. That's fine. But I think you have to recognize a couple facts. One, the reason that there was a weaponization committee 2 years ago established, the reason that the FBI stayed at the forefront of the political discussion in this country was because of my friends, because they were out there every single day. There's a strong case to be made that one of the main factors that got Donald Trump elected was government weaponization, parenthetically FBI weaponization. One of the main factors, Kash Patel is the director, and Dan Bongino is going to be the deputy director. It's because of my friends, and they fought that good fight. And if you don't do right by them, you ultimately risk what is the last initiative that I've heard about becoming a problem. The new initiatives that are being pushed in the FBI is that they want to eliminate leaks to the media. If you don't do right by guys like Garrett O'Boyle and Kyle Seraphin, Marcus Allen, Phil Kennedy, and others who are more anonymous, then you will not have people come forward in the future. You will not have people share things with me because I'm a member of the media. They can't bring it to me. They have to bring it to you. And if they bring it to you, the only example that they have is the Suspendables and how their lives were destroyed and they were never made whole. And they're sitting out in the wilderness 38 days into a presidential administration when you had it within your power to snap your fingers and do right on day one. It hasn't happened, and it's bullcrap. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of being patient. There needs to be some sort of movement, and it needs to happen yesterday on the 29-month suspendiversary of Garrett O'Boyle. The man's waited long enough. His family has suffered long enough. Others within our cohort, our families have suffered long enough. We're happy to move on with our lives if you don't want our input. But there needs to be an end. There needs to be a closing of the loop here, a bookend to the story. And if you want to correct things, you have to do right by all of us. So a heavy topic today. Got to cut it short. I got to hop on with the GOAT, Glenn Beck, on the Blaze, but I am not going to leave you without a palate cleanse, and a palate cleanse that is in keeping with our theme today, because maybe we didn't get off to the best start, but that doesn't mean that we can't necessarily win the race.
Stretch heading into the bell lap. Down.
Dornan falling down, gets up quickly, but that's going to cost her. Lucky she wasn't injured.
Her teammate just went to the front, though, so they may be able to recover from that. And Dornan is flying down the backstretch.
She is catching up.
She is going to catch Fondor, and she may catch the leader.
Wow.
Wow. She's got fun.
This is a gutsy effort by Dornan. Can she pull it off? She's moving to third. Dornan coming down the stretch from the outside. Dornan coming on strong. Dornan all the way. Dornan. Yes, she did it.
Wow.
That's how it's done, guys. That's how it's done. Don't give up. We're not out of the blocks as fast as we would like, but we can still win this thing. All right, guys, we're going to be back with you a full episode Saturday. I want to thank you very much for joining us again today. See you at 10:30 Eastern time. If you haven't already, reminder, please smash the thumbs up, give us a follow. And until Saturday, guys, have a great day.
You've been listening to the Voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amrad.